Well, welcome back to PJNET Renew US, the live, authentic worship experience right here, and we're enjoying it. I am so sorry that we had some technical problems earlier, but we've been working on them, and my guest has been extremely long-suffering and patient, so we're going to get to do some things over. He probably had some really cogent points that he made in the last session that you couldn't hear. But anyway, we've got a friend of the kingdom here with us. His name is pronounced Del Didway. Now, it is not spelled anything like that, but we will get into how to connect with him on Twitter. I ran into Del the other day. He just kind of DM'd me an article, and I was so inspired by the article because football has meant so much to me in my life. And I've had some heroes in athletics that I have looked up to in the past, and some of the things that we do here, we are concerned that the heroes of the past no longer exist, but I have good news. And I'm going to let Dale bring you some good news. Dale has engaged in a ministry of connecting with athletes of, well, let's just say high moral character. I don't think it's a denominational issue, but they're Christians. Dale, I don't know how this got started, but somehow you have catapulted into the ranks of some very, very, what's the word I'm looking for, high profile people, and you know, my heroes were Bart Starr, Roger Staubach, you know, Vince Lombardi. Today it's a different landscape out there, but you are uncovering those diamonds in the rough. Share with us a little bit about your journey.
Well, thank you for having me on here, and you know, the technical difficulties is not an issue, but this journey started for me really about 2 years ago when I went to a writers conference in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, yay, Florida!
It was called, yeah, yay, Florida. It was called the Florida Christian Writers Conference, and I'd never heard of it, never knew anything about it. A friend of mine that I had met on LinkedIn suggested that we go, and I had written a manuscript that I was wanting to pitch to an agent, but that's not what he was interested in. He was interested in my background. I was a former sports writer at our local paper, funnest job in the world I've ever had, even to this day. I was 19, 20, 21 years old, writing sports and going to ball games and meeting, you know, interviewing the people I love to watch. And so I did that for quite a while, but then had to get out of it. But he was interested in my sports background and some of the connections that I had with some athletes. And so this gentleman who played, you know, I'm in Ohio, and I'm an Ohio State fan. And my literary agent, played for that team up north, which is, you know, called the University of Michigan. Oh. And he played. Yeah, I know. He played he played for the 1997 championship team. So he played with Brady, and he played with, you know, some really big names from that school. But so, you know, we got to talking. He liked what I've done, and he signed me to a contract. And then while I was there, I ran into a good friend of mine now who's an editor at one of the bigger publishing companies. He saw my sports background, and I'd done some stories in the past, like Sports Spectrum, which is a Christian-based sports magazine, where I'd interviewed Andy Dalton of the Bengals and a couple other people. And this guy, just out of the blue, says, why don't you interview some athletes and do a devotional? And that was it. I mean, that was like, oh, okay, sure. You know, I don't know what you're talking about, but we can, you know, of course, my agent got with me. He says, this is what we want you to do. And I don't think they really thought I could really pull off what I was able to pull off. So I was able to sit down one-on-one interviews with, in baseball, some of the biggest names in baseball today. I got to sit down with Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers, Albert Pujols of the Angels, Aaron Judge of the Yankees, and Ben Zobrist of the Cubs, and Brian Dozier, then with the Twins, now with the Dodgers, and sit down with these gentlemen for 5-10 minutes and get some of their stories, some of their inspirational stories, and how God moved in their lives and what role He played and what struggles they went through and how they got through them. So I was able to get enough interviews to put together a really cool manuscript. And that book will be published February 25th of next year. It's called Dugout Devotions, and I've become friends with a gentleman like Clint Hurdle, who's the manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Blaine Boyer, who's a pitcher for the Royals right now. In fact, Blaine wrote the foreword to this book. So through all this year and a half of going and meeting with these people, just found some wonderful stories. And you mentioned some of the football heroes of our day, of the Stahlback days. I know we've put together a football devotional. It's called First Down Devotions, and that'll be out next August. And we just submitted that to New Hope Publishers about 2 weeks ago. And in this book, I sit down because, as I said earlier, the NFL in the last couple of years, justifiably so, has taken a big black eye where they've lifted up, guys like Colin Kaepernick, and who are now the I don't know, symbol of something. So we've gone to guys like Andy Dalton and to Benjamin Watson of the Saints now, who played for the Ravens when I talked to him, who won the Athletes in Action's Bart Starr Award up at the Super Bowl last year. And I got to sit down with him. I got to talk to Kurt Warner and Chad Pennington, and men who have character and who still stand for something and not afraid to tell their story and not afraid of the backlash that it brings. And we got Kirk Cousins in on this. And so we've got some really big names that sit down with me and talk to me about their testimony, about the struggles they've gone through, how they got through them. And so we've been able to put that into one book as well. So we've been really blessed over the last several months. Didn't see this coming. I'm 52 years old, and when I was 50, I went to a writing conference with really nothing. I didn't have anything to produce, and now I have 10 contracts. I have 10 book contracts.
Wow. That
I'm working on. And so everybody that's in my little circle has told me that this just doesn't happen like this, that it takes years sometimes to even land an agent, and then years to get a book published. And here, my agent says I have the favor of God on me, and I don't know how to take that sometimes, but it's just been, it's been pouring out on me because 10 contracts in less than a year with different publishers. We just signed a 2-book deal with Indiana Press University to do a book on Indiana basketball and Michigan football. I don't know how I'm going to do that.
They got the wrong guy. Yeah,
I know.
Well, you told them who you were, right? They know what they got.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, so
for those of you that don't know, Dale is a Buckeyes fan. I want to get more into your book. I kind of got in a hurry there, but I do have a question. Look, I mean, how do you just call up an athlete? How do you get his phone number? How do you get them to talk to you? I know they're willing to share their story, but in my dealings with higher profile people, whether they be athletes or congressmen or whatever, they've got a substantial barricade and gatekeepers that are very effective. How did you break through that?
Okay, that's you're very right on that, and I don't know. I just
come on, man.
And so, well, one example. All right, I normally don't get permission, but I do have a press pass. I do have a press credential, which gets me to the clubhouses. But like with Aaron Judge of the Yankees last year, who was just a blockbuster star, I thought I'm going to try to get to Aaron Judge. And so, most of the time, I just go into the clubhouse before a ball game, and if Ben Zobrist is sitting there getting ready, just walk up to him and start talking to him and tell him what I want to talk about. But with the Yankees, I thought, big time, this is the Yankees, this is media, so I'm going to call ahead and I'm going to request time with him. So I did that. I called the Yankees PR guy, I get him, I said, hey, I'd like to get 10 minutes with Judge. He goes, no. Right. I mean, didn't even bat an eye. I said, no.
But he did talk to you.
He's like, okay. So he says no. He's too much in demand. He can't spare time. I said, okay, I got it. So what I do the next day, I drove to Cleveland when they came into town, walked in the clubhouse, and there's Aaron Judge sitting at a table on his phone. I just walked over to him. I said, Mr. Judge, you got a second? He goes, yeah. He says, what do you need? I said, I'd like to talk to you about your faith and testimony. He goes, have a seat. and so we got to talking, and 10 minutes later, I was done. So even when I was told no, I still went up and got him, And I did the same thing with Clayton Kershaw. I called ahead, requested time with him, told him I was doing a piece for Clubhouse Magazine, which is a publication of Focus on the Family. That seemed to open the door, and they said, "Sure, you got 10 minutes. He'll talk to you before the game." So those two instances, I actually asked for permission. One I was told no, and still got him, and the other one I was told yes, and that happened as well with Pittsburgh, with the Steelers last year, because quarterbacks in NFL are off limits. You just can't get one-on-ones with them unless you're big time media.
Yeah.
So and they're elusive. After their press conference, they go to the shower, they're guarded, they get dressed, they leave. You can't talk to them. So I requested time with Ben Roethlisberger because of his story of when he came back from his trying to ruin his career and reputation a few years ago. And I told them what I wanted. I said, I'm doing a piece on Clubhouse and for Athletes in Action. We'd like to get 10 minutes with Ben. And 3 or 4 emails later, the guy said, "Sure, right after the game, come down, you can talk to him." And we did. He opened up to me and talked to me about the struggles he went through and how he got through them. But those instances, are rare. Most of the time, I just walk up to him, tell them what I want to talk to him about, and 99% of the time they say sure. But some of them can be standoffish at first. A great example of that was Albert Pujols. I know he's got a great reputation, does great work. Walked into the clubhouse up in Cleveland. He's playing a video game with Trout. They're sitting there playing this little video game. I walk over to him and standing kind of close to him. He looks at me with this glare and says, "Can I help you?" And he's a big guy. He's kind of intimidating. I said, "I just want to get a minute of your time. I just want to talk to you." He goes, "About what?" And he says a real abrasive. And I said, "About your faith and testimony." He goes, "Oh, sure." He says, Give me 5 minutes and we'll talk." So it was because these guys get hammered and they get trapped and they get
and most members of the press are not out to do them favors. They're not asking. Well, it sounds to me like you're using that press pass to, quote, get in the clubhouse, and from there you're able to leverage that. Because I know it's hard, Dale, but thank you for your perseverance in getting these stories. Now, let's talk about your book a little bit, because you've already published one book, Buckeye Believer. What's that book about?
Buckeye Believer. It's 40 days of devotions for the Ohio State fan, or for the Ohio State faithful, I should say. I have to get my own title. And this was my agent's idea. Kyle Young and I were sitting down in Cincinnati. He said, "Let's come up with a book that we can get out, and sell quickly and help get your name going."
Pick the low fruit.
He says, "How about?" Yeah, and so he said, "Let's do an Ohio State book." And I said, "Well, Kyle, you're from Michigan." He goes, "I know." He said, "But let's do it." So I went back and brainstormed and come up, with 40 moments, whether they're good, bad. Most of them are good. There's a few bad moments in it, and I relived the moment. Whether it's a play or player, a game or an event during the game. And I relive that moment in, 3 or 4 paragraphs. And then I try to tie it into a biblical spiritual lesson. And it really blossomed, and it took off better than I ever thought it would be. And I was able to get Jim Tressel, the former coach of the Buckeyes, who I did not know, to write the foreword of this book, and which is a fantastic story. And it's really helped, and we're seeking a couple other endorsements from some big players, and I hear nothing but good, positive responses from it. People really like it. It's a little unique. It's a little different than most devotionals, and it's been out for about 3 or 4 months now, and it's really taken off, and we're really happy about it.
Okay. We're going to post some of these links in the chat room. We put it on our schedule page. Now, you don't publish in a book form all of your encounters with athletes, but you do blog a lot.
Yeah, I do blog a lot, and I write for Athletes in Action. I put a lot of my stuff on their quick hits section, where I do my personal interviews, because they don't get a lot of those. And so we've had one the other day about Andy Dalton, and how he wears his little Kalo ring, which I wear as well. Andy got me talking into that. And it's a story about, being faithful and not only to your team, but to your spouse. And that was a gist of that post, because a lot of guys in football, for justifiable reasons, don't wear a band.
Right.
for injury or whatever, or there's other reasons they don't wear a band. So,
Right.
but Andy wears his, and he sends a signal that he's on a team that he's not going to be traded on. So
Yeah.
that was the gist of that piece. But yeah, you can go onto Athletes in Action's website, and under Quick Hits, I have a lot of things on there. The one on Ben Roethlisberger that I did last year just went ape online. I mean, it was shared on Facebook like 3,000 times. And we had so many comments. You either hate the Steelers or you love the Steelers, and I got a lot of backlash. But the whole point of that was to get a discussion going,
Yeah.
and we got a good discussion going because people didn't like what Ben was accused of doing. If he did it or not, I don't know. But the whole story was about how he got back to God, where he needed to be, and so that got that discussion going.
Wow. Well, Dale, gosh, I love this kind of thing. I wish we could just stay up all night. We may have to do it again. Just quickly,
We'll definitely do it again.
in all the numerous encounters you've had, is there any that stand out, whether they be good or bad? I mean, I know they're all good in some way, but what's the most awkward moment, I guess, you've ever had with some of these athletes?
Awkward moment. I don't want to see the athlete because I don't want to embarrass him. I went down and because I was told he had a story of faith. Well, no, let me switch gears. There was a guy I went to down in Bradenton recently to the Pirates training camp, and Clint Hurdle's a friend of mine, and we were talking. But there was an athlete in there that I've read about that was had good moral character and did the right thing and overcome obstacles. So I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about your faith," and he goes, "I'm kind of busy right now." And I said, "Okay, I get it. How about in about 10 minutes?" No. I said, how about after the game? I'll catch you. He just went, no. He just was not going to talk to me about that. So I kind of got the message, and I get it. And then there was another gentleman who played football last year in Houston. A kind of similar encounter. I walked up and said, "Yeah, I'll talk to you about your faith. You put a lot of things out on Twitter, which is great. I'd like to talk to you about that." And he goes, "Man, that's just for show." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah."
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Well,
yeah. I said, "Okay."
All right, at least he's honest, yeah.
So I just kind of switched gears and went some other direction. But I had a good story about a year ago where I was down in Cincinnati, and a gentleman that I knew told me that he led one of the players to the Lord, when he was in like Little League. So I found that player after a game, was talking to him. I said, "Hey, such and such said to say hi to you, that he led you to God, years ago." And he goes, "Yeah, he did, but I don't do that anymore." And I said, "Oh," I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, nothing. I just don't live that life anymore." And I said, "Well, do you want me to tell him, or do you want to tell him?" And he goes, "Well, I'll tell him." So hopefully I planted a seed there to where he could have a discussion with his mentor, and maybe find his way back. But that was a good opportunity there that we actually had a good chat, and didn't chastise him. He didn't chastise me. It was a good discussion.
Wow.
So that was good. Yeah.
Dale, I'm so excited for your ministry, and it seems like your career and your ministry is just catapulted, from a relatively meager, obscure foundations to proportions that sometimes we dare not dream like that. But I'm happy for you.
2 years ago, I had zero social media. I was not on anything, and Twitter, nothing. And so my agent said, "You have to get on social media," and that's where that's where you and I met. So I've met some really good, lasting relationships from Twitter, social media, but there's also some goofs out there. But I went from nobody knowing who the heck I was to now I'm writing for Focus on the Family. I was on the website of a personality from Fox News who saw one of my blogs and said, "Can I put your post on my website?" I said, "Well, sure."
Yeah, let me think about it. Yeah, I just thought about it. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Never ask me. Just always assume it's yes. I won several writing awards in the last 2 years, and now the conferences that I've been going to and listening to speakers, and the next one in November, I'm actually teaching at it. So I'm teaching, how to interview just big name celebrities and sports stars. So
Okay.
Well,
folks, just watch this. Just get a press pass, hang out in the clubhouse, and take your chances. Never ask for permission; it doesn't work. Just show up.
Just do it. Never, but don't ask for an autograph. You get kicked out.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Dale, I'm excited for your ministry. I'm excited about what's happening in your career, and I can't wait to hear more. I hope that it's just good to see that athletes are using their place in the spotlight, their place in the stage for some worthwhile purpose. I see so much that is just discouraging today, but find those heroes, put them on a stage, turn the light on them, because we need to shine the light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they are in a great position to help and influence. I know what those athletes in my past and my coach has meant to me almost every day. I reflect upon and draw strength from. Next time we get together, I'll share the little Bart Starr thing and a thing called punt, pass, and kick. Changed my life. In fact, I've already done a video on it. I think I'll find and forward that video to you. It's hard to imagine just how much influence these athletes have on young men and women, and I just think what you're doing is amplifying that and bringing it to the forefront, because it seems the mainstream media is pushing it underwater, and we're bringing up these monsters that hate that. It's just very depressing. So, Dale,
it is.
God bless you. Thank you for your encouraging work that you're doing, and we want to hear more as time goes on.